the rules lawyer here to give a briefing on the Thaumaturge, one of the two classes, the other being the psychic, that the Pathfinder 2e designers have just released for playtest. So this is a playtest class, and that comes with its usual caveats. It's going to generally be weaker if the past were to inform us, because they don't like to put out a final version of a class that is weaker than what people were used to during the playtest. And also, they will be giving us a subset of what the eventual class will be in terms of options and maybe even features, because it's a test. They are trying to experiment with various mechanics and get our feedback. With that said, I am inclined to withdraw that caveat with the Thaumaturge. It actually seems just about right, in my humble opinion, at the time of the playtest in terms of power level. We will see. My name is Ronald. I am the rules lawyer. I am a lawyer as well as a game master for children. I teach and run tabletop role-playing games, D&D 5th edition, Pathfinder 2nd edition, and Starfinder with kids. And I am making, as we speak, my 10th video, and almost at 500 subscribers. So please like and subscribe and help me get past that milestone. So the first thing I wanted to speak on was the name, Thaumaturge. I honestly did not know what a Thaumaturge was until I did a little looking into it, and some suggested synonyms are miracle worker, magician, witch, and shaman. And so the class fantasy that suggests to me is not someone who bends time and space and casts spells like Gandalf, but someone who taps into, is aware of, and can connect with the magic and the things and the environment around them. And the picture of the Thaumaturge is, I'll put it up to my side and show it to you. It's someone with many objects, and implements are how thaumaturgists access their more extraordinary magical abilities in the playtest. And via class feats, they also can possibly have access to many scrolls, talismans, which are consumable, magical, one-time use objects that you can attach to your gear. And so they are the magic via items class. But that doesn't really speak to what their core is, and we will look into their core features in a second. The Thaumaturge is what I would call a near martial, in that they have the same proficiencies with weapons and armor that other martial characters do, such as champions and rangers. But they only have 8 hit points per level. Their key ability score is charisma, not one of the physical stats. And they have as their main class feature getting knowledge about enemies and finding their weaknesses, which they can share with the party. And their other main class feature is the implement, which gives them a suite of abilities that may or may not be combat related. They, in theme with them being masters of magical knowledge, they automatically start with knowledge in arcana, occultism, religion, and in nature, which are the 4 traditions of magic, correspond with those, and also with identifying the vast majority of creatures and their abilities. They have dubious knowledge as a class feature, as a default feat, which even on a regular failure to recall knowledge, they will learn something true and something false. That is in theme with their being masters of knowledge. They have esoterica, which are magical or quasi-magical items that they carry around with them that have some significance to the thaumaturgist. They have the action Find Flaws, which I call recall knowledge on steroids. For one action, they get to recall knowledge about a creature. This is limited to once per round. And remember, they're proficient with those 4 knowledge abilities. And on top of that, they get to use their charisma bonus, which, as we recall, is their key ability. So it's probably maxed out to identify that creature. And in addition, if they succeed in recalling knowledge about the creature, they will know its most significant weakness, its highest weakness. And if they critically succeed, they know all of its weaknesses, all of its resistances, and all of its immunities. If they fail, they don't get additional information. And if they critically fail, they become flat-footed until the beginning of their next turn. Then in addition, if they do find flaw, they set up the esoteric antithesis action. And I have to say, this playtest challenges the vocabulary. The esoteric antithesis is one action where you work with your esoterica and your implement to affect your weapon or your strikes and yourself so that you can target the weakness of the creature that you just found a flaw in. Now, if that creature did not have a flaw, you can still apply a custom weakness when you make attacks to that creature of a certain amount that gets higher as you level. Now back to find flaw. If you succeed or better on your recall knowledge check that was part of find flaw, you can do esoteric antithesis for it as a free action. If you have a regular failure, not a critical failure, you can still do esoteric antithesis as a single action. If that creature does have a weakness, then your strikes against that creature count as targeting that highest weakness, even if your attack does not normally trigger that weakness. And again, if they don't have a weakness, then you apply a custom weakness. They have an implement, and these are the subclass of the Thaumaturge. There are 5 implements in the playtest. The final version of the class is going to have 9. And it's something that you will usually hold in one hand. The implement, there's an implement empowerment ability that if you have a free hand or have your implement in one hand, you get to use that with motions, drawing patterns in the air to, without an action, add 2 to the damage that you do with your weapon. And this increases as you increase in level. So they get a class feat at level 1 like other marshals. So I'll go over the 5 implements that are provided, but just to give a sense of the progression of the class, these implements each represent a subclass of the class. They get 1 at level 1. At 5th level, they get a second implement, so they get to broaden their abilities there and get a second, quote, subclass, unquote. As we go over the implements, you'll see that each implement has a initial ability, a middle ability called the adept ability, and then a high tier ability called the paragon ability. The Thaumaturge at 7th level gets the adept ability of one of their implements, and they have 2 at that time. At 15th level, they get a 3rd implement, and then at 17th level, they get to either make a 2nd implement unlock its adept ability, or make their adept implement ability unlock that one's paragon ability. So that is the main progression of the class. One thing to point out is that they get legendary proficiency in will saves at 13th level, and as far as I can tell, they're the only class that gets that. The spellcasters, the primary spellcasters, some of them get it, but at much higher level, and so that was interesting to me. And that's all I'll say about that. So the implements. There are 5 implements. The first one is the amulet, and this is the defensive protection implement. So at 1st level, they get this reaction called Amulet's Abeyance, where if the Thaumaturgist or an ally within 15 feet would receive damage, you get to do a reaction that is comparable to what a champion does with a good aligned champion does with their champion's reaction. You get to give resistance to all damage to yourself if it was you, or your ally within 15 feet if it was them. And resistance to all damage can be very powerful. It applies against each type of damage that is in the damaging effect. At 7th level, they get to confer resistance to one of the types of damage that was part of the trigger. And that starts at resistance 5, and that increases at higher level. And at 17th level, the Paragon benefit means that you can confer both the resistance to the initial damage and the subsequent persisting resistance to a damage type to yourself and all allies within 15 feet when the trigger happens. And so this actually extends the reaction to apply to area effects like Cone of Cold or Fireball. You can give yourself and all allies who are near you resistance to all damage. I wanted to add that the Implements Empowerment class feature that requires you have a free hand or a hand holding an implement to add damage to what you're holding in your other hand seems to preclude shields on thaumaturges. I don't know if that was considered and intended by the designers, and it would seem like that would be fixed if the amulet could be a shield. Now, I don't know if they have plans for allowing the thaumaturges to work well with shields. We'll see. So the second implement is the chalice, and this is the healing implement. And you have a goblet, something that holds a drink. And at first level, you have the drink from the chalice action, which you can apply to yourself or an ally. And there are two potential effects. One, they can sip, or you can sip from it and get temporary hit points that last until the end of your next turn. Or you can drain the cup to get actual healing. And this does not preclude sipping from it later. Basically, think of sipping as something you can always do, and draining as something you can do once, but then 10 minutes need to pass before the next time you can drain it. One thing I'll point out, okay, it can only be once per round, but it was notable to me that it does not have the manipulate trait. So it actually seems like you can, under the reach of an ogre with an attack of opportunity, provide the chalice to someone who's downed or desperately needs healing. Now, I don't know if that was intended, but that makes that very useful, even more useful. The 7th level adept ability is situational. Basically, it enhances what the chalice provides. If you start getting persistent bleed damage, the idea is that your blood is being added to what's in the chalice, or you are critically hit by a foe that does piercing or slashing damage to you. These seem to be pretty... I was hoping the payoff would be a little better than what's given. It's a modest improvement of the sip and the drain abilities. Okay, we'll see if that changes. But I also wonder if there's going to be the ability to voluntarily make yourself bleed. That could be an interesting trade-off between damaging yourself to help your allies. The Paragon benefit is what I want to call the super smoothie. Basically, this drink removes it lessens all of these conditions by 1. Clumsy, enfeebled, frightened, stupefied, and stunned if stunned has a number. It also reduces the drained condition by 1, but only once per day per drinker. And also, simultaneously, it counteracts all poisons, diseases, and curses. So all the afflictions that are in this game. And if it fails to counteract a given affliction, it cannot cannot succeed at doing that until after midnight. And after midnight is a nice little flavor touch that I like. There's actually a few other abilities that refer to the day cycle. The third implement is the lantern, which is about finding secrets. So you hold a lantern, which is your implement, and this shines the light of radius of a torch. And within the bright light radius, which is within 20 feet, you and all your allies have +1 status bonus to your visual perception checks, and also +1 status bonus to all checks to recall knowledge. So this stacks with your find flaw ability. And in addition, you automatically get a secret check against all hazards. So that includes traps, haunts, and things that are secret as well, such as secret doors. So this is a very, very powerful ability for exploration mode. The Adept ability at 7th level adds to that what you can do with the light by letting you see invisible and ethereal enemies. It doesn't make them observed to you. They do become observed to you, but they still are concealed, and so you still would have a mischance if you were to try to target them. The Paragon benefit, the 17th level benefit, makes your lantern automatically get a secret counteract check to any illusion or transmutation effect within 20 feet. That is in the area of the bright light. And it allows you, and it says others, to see through it. Doesn't cancel, it doesn't dispel the effect, but you can still see that it's illusory or not what it originally, or not what it appears to be in the case of transmutation. And what's unclear to me is who the others are, whether that includes only your allies, people you choose. That seems like it could use more definition. The 4th implement is the wand, and so this is the Harry Potter fantasy, where your implement is a short baton, and at first level you get the fling magic activity, which is basically a ranged attack that can go up to 80 feet, and it does 1d4 plus your charisma modifier in damage. This is an activity that calls for a basic reflex save by the target, and it's based on your class DC, which is based on your charisma, which goes up to master at high levels. You have to select whether you do fire damage, electricity damage, or cold damage at level 1, and you're stuck with that damage type. This increases as the damage increases as you level up. If you get the Adept benefit at 7th level, you get to choose a second one of those energy types, and the range of your fling magic is 120 feet. It increases. And with the Adept benefit, if they critically fail their save, there's an additional effect that happens to them. If it's fire, they get persistent fire damage. If it's cold, they get -10 status penalty to speed. If it's electricity, they become flat-footed until the start of your next turn. The Paragon benefit at 17th level extends the range even further to 180 feet, and furthermore, you get access to the 3rd damage type that you haven't chosen yet, and you get to choose whether to affect one target or affect a 10-foot burst within that range. The 5th and last implement that they've given us in the playtest is the weapon implement, and this is for those who want to enhance their own fighting ability. The 1st level benefit is a reaction that is similar to Attack of Opportunity, but is not. It's called Implement's Interruption. It's basically a way to react with a weapon strike against somebody in certain situations, so similar to Attack of Opportunity, but you have to have already set up your esoteric antithesis against the creature. There's a different set of things that can trigger it. Ranged attacks do not trigger it. Manipulate actions still do. Move actions still do. Leaving a square during a move action still does. But also concentrate actions will trigger. Then you can use your melee weapon or a ranged weapon if the target is within 10 feet. So you can use a ranged weapon even. In addition, you, on a critical hit, disrupt the triggering action. So this is going to affect spells that have only verbal components, any special monster abilities that have the concentrate trait. Also, if someone is trying to stand up from prone, you can disrupt them standing up. So it has some positives and negatives compared to attack of opportunity. But it's kind of in the same niche thematically as the ranger, in that once you have your eye on something and want to kill it, you are going to be doing a good job at that. At 5th level, they get the critical specialization effect of their implement, and that's part of the initial benefit of the implement. So it could be picked up at a higher level if it's not your first implement. The adept benefit that can be attained at 7th level has it so that when you use your implement's interruption, even if you have a failure that is not a critical failure, you still do 1 damage of that weapon's normal type. And that does not sound like much, but remember, this is against the creature you're using esoteric antithesis against, and so this will trigger the weakness, whichever weakness you're able to use. The 17th level benefit that can be gotten, the Paragon benefit, makes your interruptions disrupt even on a regular success. And so woe to the spellcaster who is next to a high-level weapon thaumaturgist. So those are the implements. Now, I'll make a few comments on the class feats before doing a demonstration. The class feats give a whole variety of options similar to other classes and to build on these themes. Now, I just want to make one criticism and possible suggestion about these feats, in that it seems right now that there's at most 2, but in almost all cases 1 feat at every level tier of class feats that is combat focused. And so if someone is purely concerned about enhancing their ability to do damage, or their allies' ability to do damage to creatures that they identify the weaknesses of, there's a straight line path in the playtest. Now, this could just be the fact that it's a playtest and there are fewer feats that are being provided to us. However, it does create this uncomfortable tension that I thought 2nd edition would get away from, of pitting combat feats next to more utility feats. And there's quite a bit of very flavorful, very cool utility class feats that are among the class feats. So a number of the class feats are ones that I like to call item class feats. They let you, they further the class fantasy of being always prepared and having lots of items, the way the picture of the iconic character is. And so there is the prescient planner general feat that they can get, and the prescient consumable, which basically treats you as always prepared for any occasion, and you can say, oh, I happen to have that, and reach into your pack and point out the perfect item for the occasion. And they even have the ability at highest levels to do that more than once between shopping trips. There are feats that let you have scrolls prepared for the day, and they are not limited by a specific magical tradition. They are set to your class DC, which again goes up to master. And so this seems like a really unmatched ability to cast spells at high proficiencies from any tradition that you want. And this is one of the things that make me pause as to whether this is the usual underpowered playtest, whether it's just right, and whether it perhaps is overpowered in some respects. And then there are feats that let you prepare talismans, which I know many players tend to forget about or not keep from treasure hoards, but if you're given the ability to have talismans as consumables and prepare them for free every morning, maybe that will see more popularity among players, and this lets you have that. It's similar to what the Talisman Dabbler archetype provides. Then there are feats that let you have a familiar, again, much more access to utility, And then there's feats that let you share the benefits you get from your find flaw and esoteric antithesis abilities, sharing those with your allies or enhancing them. Then there are those that enhance your ability to attain knowledge. There's something similar to bardic knowledge at first level. There are utility feats that have to do with the occult and dealing with spirits, binding spirits. And then there are pacts, which nearly every one of them has the uncommon tag. And these are something that you talk to your GM about, where they strike a bargain with some kind of powerful entity. And very, very similar to the patrons of the 5e Warlock in that sense. But what I like about these pacts is that they actually spell out an obligation for you and say what happens when you don't follow the obligation. And the benefits you get are defined in the pacts. One of the my favorites is the Pact of Final Breath, which you swear a pact with a psychopomp, which are the ushers of the afterlife that take someone upon death, ushers their spirit to their final destination. And they want assistance in destroying the undead so that souls can start their journey to where they are intended to go. And so you have to swear an oath to destroy all undead within reason, and also respect the dead and perform rites when necessary. The benefit you get is that the first time every day that you would be reduced to 0 hit points and gain the dying condition, you instead immediately heal a certain number of hit points and gain fast healing of a certain amount for 3 rounds. And the other benefit is that you get to live past your natural life cycle. You get to live twice as long as you normally would be able to live. And I really like this one cool addition. It says that if you violate your pact, all of the benefits immediately end, and if you're past your natural lifespan, the psychopomps typically give you a few moments to make any last farewells, and then you simply breathe your final breath and pass on. That's a really cool flavor addition. And okay, I go into this because I think pacts should not be limited to thaumaturges. I think that there should be a set of bargains you can strike. They're just really cool thematically, and they are cool, and they're one reason why 5e warlocks are popular, besides the versatility in your building your warlock. But it seems like a perfect thing to expand on and make available to all characters as an option in the Dark Archive book, which presumably is about things like that. So I hope we see more things like this, but that they're not limited to the thaumaturgist. I think they should be separated out personally and made available to everybody. So that's my overview of the class feats. So on to our demonstration. So I just want to comment that Mio has 18 charisma and has not increased their intelligence and wisdom, but when they find a flaw, they get to rely on their charisma score for recalling knowledge. And their class feat is Root to Life, which is to help downed allies. And they are a human with the Natural Ambition Ancestry feat, and so can choose a second level 1 class feat, which in this case is Divine Disharmony, to use an object, religious objects, to distract enemies and make them possibly flat-footed. Our heroes are Mio, Valoros the Fighter, Poog the Cleric, Merisil the Rogue, and Ezrin the Wizard. They go into this crypt expecting a big fight with undead, and the encounter has begun. Mio is first in initiative. Mio, with the light that's available to them, knows, on the one hand, that there are several creatures that are fighting them, but they can only see the skeleton guard. They want to recall knowledge about something, and it has to be the skeleton guard because they have to see them for the find flaw ability. So they're going to roll the appropriate skill, which is religion. And in this case, it is not a 7, it is actually a 11 because they are applying charisma. That's a regular failure. So they don't obtain any knowledge, they don't learn any weaknesses of the guard, and they still can do the esoteric antithesis action as their next action. Because they did not succeed, it will cost them 1 action to do that. So Mio applies an item to power their weapon against this skeleton. And even though the skeleton does not have a weakness, we, the viewers and the GM, know they don't have a weakness. Mio will be able to treat it as if it has a weakness 2 at level 1. Poog is next and can see everything because he has dark vision. And what he'll do is cast a bless spell. He sees that there's a tough fight and give +1 status bonus to all allies within this emanation. Next is the skeleton guard. Oh, and Poog has 1 more action and probably step forward. I decided to apply a different aura. So the skeleton guard was going to go forward and attack Poog. It takes 2 actions to stride at this distance and swings its scimitar. 17 will hit Poog and do 4 damage to Poog. Next is this second skeleton guard, who's going to charge forward and only takes 1 action, and then will strike at Valeros, who is using the defend exploration activity, so actually already has his shield raised, and strike Valeros. So because Valeros raised, well, it didn't change the result, but it does do 7 damage to Valeros. Valeros is not able to use shield block because he has not had a turn yet. Mauricio sees a chance to flank an enemy and moves here and will go after the skeleton guard and treat it as flat-footed. And this is a critical hit, which will likely annihilate the skeleton guard. 24 damage, and its resistance against piercing will not save it. Ezrin is next and is going to go forward to provide more illumination to the party. Wants to stay next to Valeros, and so everyone can now see that there's a zombie brute up ahead. So what Ezrin will do is try to recall knowledge about this intelligent looking skeleton with glowing eyes, and will do a religion check. Well, Ezra knows it's a skeletal champion that has intelligence and also has the attack of opportunity reaction. So Ezrin's last action is going to be to recall knowledge about the zombie brute, and does not succeed at finding out anything. So Valeros is now going to attack the skeleton guard that's right in front of him. Whoops, wrong weapon. 12 is going to be a miss, and 22 will hit and apply 2 damage after the skeleton guard's resistance is taken into account, and raise his shield. The zombie brute has only 2 actions, being a zombie, and is going to move here and then strike at Mauricio, and it has 10-foot reach, so that's the square it needs to go up to. So a 20 will hit Mauricio and do 9 damage to Mauricio. It hits hard and also pushes Mauricio 5 feet because of the improved push ability. There's no empty square there, so I'm just going to have Mauricio stay where she is. So next is the skeletal champion, which will go up 1, 2, 3, 4, and flank Mauricio and swing his longsword. And that misses. And the skeletal champion will also raise his shield. He has a shield. So Mio sees that this skeletal champion is quite threatening. So Mio is going to try to recall knowledge about the skeletal champion so that Mio hopes to find out a weakness of it. A 25, that's the actual roll, is a regular success. And so Mio finds out that it also has the shield block reaction, and also learns a weakness. The Mio benefits from recall knowledge, and in addition to that, learns one weakness, the highest weakness of the creature. Well, the skeletal champion does not have a weakness. However, this does set up Mio being able to use the antithesis ability as a free action, which Mio does against the skeletal champion. So, armed with that knowledge, Mio will go ahead. Now, I'm going to point out that if Mio were standing right here while doing this, then the esoteric antithesis would have provoked the attack of opportunity from the skeletal champion. Even though it's a free action, it includes the interact action within it, regardless. So, however, Mio was not standing there. Mio goes forward and attacks the skeletal champion with the pick. A 25 will hit the skeletal champion with the raised shield. So Mio is going to roll damage. Now Mio has a free hand and is wielding the pick. Mio's implement ability that lets them increase the damage of their pick applies, and so this would actually be +2 is added to the 7 damage. So 9 damage is what's going to be applied to the skeletal champion. And the skeletal champion is going to shield block that and reduce that to 4 damage using their shield. And their shield will lose 4 hit points as well. Lastly, 4 damage goes through, and Mio's ability, even though the skeletal champion does not have a weakness, Mio is able to treat it as having weakness 2 to their damage. So this will be 6 damage to the skeletal champion. That's 3 actions. So next is Poog, who wants to heal Mauricio, and Poog is a cleric and will do the 3-action version of heal. Poog will drop his shield to do so, since it uses the material action, and rolls a d8. 3 points will be healed to Valeros and Mauricio, and 3 potential damage will apply to all of the undead in the room. So this skeleton is going to critically fail, so it takes 6 damage and dies. The skeletal champion will critically fail and roll 1, and so it takes 6 damage as well. This spell's going very well. The zombie brute will roll a 26, which is a regular success. So it takes 1 positive damage. However, our zombie brute friend has weakness 10 to positive damage, and so it actually takes 11 damage. So Mauricio is next, and she knows the skeletal champion has attack of opportunity, and she would like to be in a flanking position. So what she'll do, she has one option. She could step here and step here, which does not provoke reactions, and then flank against the skeletal champion. However, she does not like the idea of being threatened by both creatures. So what she'll do is she'll try to feint against the skeletal champion. A 15 fails. So she is going to make an attack with her rapier and hope to bypass its resistance to... Well, actually, instead of her rapier or her dagger, she's going to, from her past experience with skeletons, she wants to do bludgeoning damage. So she is going to drop her dagger and do a fist attack against the skeletal champion. Dropping does not provoke. A 17 misses. However, that was a very good idea. And she will stay where she is and try to punch a second time. And that misses also. Just some bad luck. Okay, so Ezrin wants to help out, and he has Rave Enfeeblement and Grease. So those target different saving throws, and he would like to know more about this zombie, but does not want to waste a spell targeting its strongest save. He's going to hold off on that. He would recall knowledge about the zombie, but he already failed a recall knowledge. So what he'll do is cast Electric Arc against both creatures, and this will do 8 base damage against both of them, and they're going to both make reflex saves. The zombie brute critically fails and takes 16 electricity, and the skeletal champion will critically succeed and take 0 damage. So Valros is next, and he would love to trip the skeletal champion, because if he were to do that, it would feel compelled to stand up, which would provoke the attack of opportunity from Valros, as well as Mio's implements interruption, since Mio used the esoteric antithesis against it. So Valros releases his shield, and then with his free hand tries to trip the skeletal champion. 21 succeeds. So the skeletal champion falls prone, and then with Valros' second action, he will try to strike it. Oh, actually, this would be the +4, since the athletics check contributed to the multiple attack penalty. Well, regardless, that would be a critical failure, but it has no effect in this case. So the zombie brute wants to attack the creature nearest to it. It will punch Valros and miss. It rolled low. And with the second attack, it does hit him to do 16 damage. And in this case, it knocks out Valros. It is a very scary monster. The skeletal champion will stand up. Valros has been knocked out, so Valros is not a factor here, but the skeletal champion, in trying to stand up, will provoke this implements interruption from Mio. Now, because it potentially disrupts the movement, I believe it is resolved before the skeletal champion stands up, and it is a success, and the Mio will roll damage. Okay, this will actually be 12 damage because of Implement's Empowerment plus the esoteric antithesis. Many syllables involved here. And it stands up. And will now try to strike Mauricio. No, try to strike Mio. That's a miss, and it will raise its shield. So Mio has the option of using Root to Life to stabilize Valros, but that would provoke the attack of opportunity from the skeletal champion. Also, they know that Poog can heal Valros using his heal spell. So Mio, facing the skeletal champion who's almost dead, or almost destroyed, will attack the skeletal champion again. Though Mio wants to definitely get a hit through, so Mio will use their Divine Disharmony ability. And so this is an intimidation or deception check against the will DC of the skeleton. And that succeeds. So that makes the skeletal champion flat-footed against Mio's strikes this turn. If Mio had critically succeeded, the target would be flat-footed until the end of Mio's next turn. And this would be flat-footed only against Mio's attacks. So Mio now makes a strike. And this 21 will hit for 10 damage because of the buffs. And the skeletal champion shields blocks, but that is still 5 damage going through, and it is destroyed. So for Mio's last action, they will find flaw against the zombie brute. So this will be a religion check, but using their charisma. So Mio has a regular failure, and so gets dubious knowledge, learns that it's going to be weak to positive damage and learns something false. Let's say its strongest save is reflex, which is not true. And Mia will need to use another action to do esoteric antithesis against it, but Mio has run out of actions. So Pooh goes next and will do a 3-action heal to bring Valeros up again. And 1 hit point is still going to be enough. Valeros gets wounded 1 condition, and Marissa is killed 1, and the zombie brute has to do a fortitude save against it and fails and takes 11 damage. 1 positive damage does 11 damage because of its weakness. That took 3 actions. So Mauricio will want to delay, hopes to get flanking from can benefit now from flanking from Valeros, purely because he's conscious, even though he's on the ground and without his weapon. So Mauricio moves here and uses her rapier and hits. So she does 9 damage and gets sneak attack damage. So 13 damage against the zombie. Had she known that it was weak to slashing, she could have picked up her dagger, but she did not know that. So Ezrin is next and will do another cantrip against it, and probably electric arc again. So this will do 8 damage, and this is a failure on its save, so it takes 8 electricity damage. Valeros will stand up, pick up his sword, and pick up his shield and actually raise his shield. He wants to be useful, but wants to protect himself as much as possible since he has the wounded condition. The zombie brute is next. I will roll randomly to see who it attacks. It's going to attack Valeros. So a 14 will miss, a 15 will miss, and it has 2 actions, so it's done. Mio will use esoteric antithesis, walk up to it. So that's 2 actions, and actually walk here wants to benefit from flanking. And so we'll attack the zombie brute. A 13 hits because of the flanking, and because of esoteric antithesis, his pick will take into account its largest weakness, and its weakness 10 to positive, and its weak 10 to slashing damage. Although Mio is not applying either kind of damage, it will apply the weakness. So this will be 6 plus 2 from Implement's Empowerment, so 8 damage, plus 10 to the weakness, and the zombie brute dies. I will point out that the party did not definitely know that it was weak to positive. However, the weakness applied. So, did you agree or disagree with anything I said? You should leave a comment on the video and like and subscribe. And also, which implement of the 5 that are in the playtest seemed the most fun to you? And do you have any builds in your head that you would want to share? I'd like to hear what you think. And also, participate in the Paizo playtest. We have between now and October 29th to let them know directly what we think. They put much more value to opinions that are derived from actual experience, making characters and playing them. And so keep that in mind. So my final thoughts. The Thaumaturge seems a lot of fun. The implements really make clear what the class fantasy of that subclass is, their ability to intuit the weaknesses of enemies and to share that with the party makes them feel really much that they're contributing to the party, and they also buff their own attacks. It makes me think of the Inquisitor from first edition Pathfinder, also the plentiful skills does, and their ability to narrow and issue a challenge to an enemy and narrow their focus to a single creature. And it's a departure from the Occultist in first edition, which this is supposedly the spiritual successor to. It actually is, but the Occultist was a spellcaster, and this is not by default. It's interesting that they've gone for the same class fantasy but used different mechanics. This is primarily a martial, and that kind of gets at my one concern, which is that thematically and mechanically it seems to be have a lot of hats to wear. It can do many things, and it leads in this case to that tension between direct damage, weapon damage focused feats, and sharing those buffs with the party, with other more occult utility abilities in the class feats. So some thought, I think, should be put to that. I don't have a specific solution that I would propose, but hopefully they will keep that in mind for the final version. So that's my briefing on the Thaumaturge. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you haven't yet seen my video on the Psychic playtest, I plan to do videos on the Gunslinger and Inventor, which will be coming out in final form when I get my subscription PDF. And that'll be in a couple weeks, hopefully. And yeah, so thanks again, and I will see you next time.